And we're back with Richard Reviews. Today we are reviewing a book for richardreviews.com/Griffin Chestnut here on YouTube. Today's book that Richard will be reviewing for us is, of course, The Temple of the Golden Pavilion by Yukio Mishima. This is a temporal classic, and according to the New York Times, this has established Mishima's claim as one of the outstanding writers of the world. This is a vintage international copy. This piece right here is Richard's personal piece. This is one of his most prized collections. This reaches number in his top 10 collection of all-time favorite pieces by all-time favorite authors as well. Yukio Mishima has greatly inspired Richard throughout his human behavioral education. So right off the bat, of course, Richard is a fantastic fan. He thought this piece was amazing and absolutely outstanding. 10 out of 10 in Richard's opinion. 10 stars, 5 stars, 10 out of 10, 2 thumbs up for Richard's piece. This is a fantastic read. None the wiser would you be to sit down and complete this novel. It has inspired Richard in many ways, including a lot of other authors that came out of Japan during the 21st century. Now, Yukio Mishima, of course, if you already know, has a very interesting life. Accordingly, his whole backstory is really interesting. It's very deep, it's very epic, it's very profound, and it's very respectful. Richard understands this, but to take the author out of the situation as glorified as he can be, let's dig into the piece at hand and actually what makes this piece different, if not better, than a lot of other works by similar authors or other works of Mishima himself. Richard read this book in the same year he purchased it. This book has been in Richard's mind to track down and read for some time. He was fortunate enough to do that in the year 2014 when he tracked it to a Canadian contractor up in the Yukon Valley next to British Columbia. Richard, of course, being a New York native living in upstate New York near the town of Schenectady, doing a lot of outdoor hiking and camping, found it necessary that he wanted to start this piece while he was building his outdoor cabin on his property. He tracked down the Yukon Valley contractor and made his trek towards Canada. Once there, in the same year of 2014, he legally purchased this piece, which he then added to his collection, and he completed reading the entire piece in 2014 as well. His entire review of this piece can be found on his blog, which you can click the link in the description for his entire thesis, which includes an analysis of every page, almost word by word. That's how dedicated and influential Richard is to this piece. Now, Richard, after reading it in 2014, he completed his blog, and most of the behavior in free will that Richard's blog maintains constitutes, there's a lot of change going on between the room and, of course, evolution. You know, by Charles Darwin, which is a genetic influence, of course, by Diana Turker, who has biological differences of aggression and different parts of the basis of sex. Richard understands that, and Mishima sort of gets into this a little bit with different flutters, and the flutters can be explained obviously by nature. Nature is fascinating and it's magnificent, and the interaction between nature and nurture is obviously nourished again once by flutter. And flutter is like a drag word underneath the course of control, which you're trying to get something in common. There is a beautiful element of 4 events that were scraped out of being, these 4 circumstances that have something surprising in common. A woman's period, a brain tumor, eating a lot of junk food, and taking anabolic steroids. These are all in the same aspect of testosterone derivatives. These all have something in common, which Richard, of course, dilates to taking a lot of Will Peterson's, Patrick House, and against, of course, amongst the four of them, hormones are basically what you're running with. When you run with hormones, you're running in different styles. Now, something to take note here, since there is one thing in common between this beautiful piece, we're going to take a look at the condition of it and Richard's personal piece himself. It is a soft cover, as you can tell. It's got great bend, absolutely outstanding bend. Since Richard brought this in the mountains with him, it's not in the best condition. As you can see, there are some markings on the front, as well as some corrosive damage, probably from being in Richard's backpack. But it appears that Richard has left a note in here as well. We're gonna get into that, as well as Richard's his writings along this piece. But it is a immaculately beautiful piece that we're very fortunate enough to be able to review here with Richard, and the entirety of the complex nature of what entails this piece in its ingenuity. So on the bottom here, the condition, as you can see, very good. The bottom, the condition remains very well. Top trim is very good. Bottom brim is very good. And middle cream, very good. Let's check out that middle cream. That's some good middle cream. Yeah, that's good middle cream. It's got that fluidity in it. Even on the side, there is some brim wall tracking over here and a little collective dust, but this all comes back to the cream. Beautiful cream, very good steam, and you can tell it's got very good steam. More good cream, and a little more good cream too. On the top, of course, good cream, nice trim, nice brim, nice crim. And on the side, we have the Temple of the Golden Pavilion, Mishima. And this is the vintage collection. Of course, this was originally released in Japanese, but has since been translated. And we're going to talk about the translation, how it affected Richard, why it affected Richard, when it affected Richard, and ultimately its endeavorment into the species at hand. Now, as we take a look at the back, we have a price right above the barcode, and it looks like we have $16.95 in US and $22.95 in Canadian. So definitely appropriate price for what can be said about this piece. Now, it also shows in the back that it has been translated from the Japanese by Ivan Morris. So Ivan Morris, of course, was directed by the affiliates of Vintage Corporation about how to approach this project with what he has entailed and what is at stake. Richard felt he did an amazing job because Richard cannot read Japanese, nor can he speak Japanese, but he understands to his maximum ability how much he actually has in common with Yukio Mishima. So up here, fiction literature, since it is a work of art, and let's take a look inside now as we get into it. This is of course one of his most outstanding pieces, The Temple of the Golden Pavilion by Yukio Mishima, and there is a lot of side notes and footnotes that Richard has put in here, incorporating himself into the piece itself. This is when it starts. Of course, this is the act of seppuku, where Yukio Mishima is no stranger to. Richard has left this note in here, unsure why. We should not be tearing it off, though, since it is Richard's piece, but he ultimately felt obliged to keep this in there. There is some tentative highlighting and paraphrasing in terms of other areas that Richard felt was necessary to do so. This is all in common with what Richard feels the need and the necessity to cultivate an understanding of an artist such as Mishima himself, in terms of the body, the soul, and everything else that Richard has maintained has shown a exceptional delight in all of his writings. And Richard felt the need to understand not only the spiritual side, but the feeling of everything that Mishima has brought into. There is definitely a lot of footnotes. The character font is Times New Roman, and it's an appropriate stance and size for the matter at hand. There is a small dialectic knowledge of encryptic formalities, but you could barely get past them. And if we go towards the end here, we have 251 for the official page count towards the end. So we can officially and fairly and accurately say that this is most definitely a 267 page piece, of course titled The Temple of the Golden Pavilion by Yukio Mishima, whereas there's of course a lot to dig in, a lot to dive about it. Moments of belief, you can change your mind if you come across this piece, as your hormones normally will, and you can facilitate what these hormones cultivate. And there's 4 things in common, and Mishima successfully brings us back to these 4 things over and over and over again for the example of the behavior of a murderer. Once you start murdering, it's intentively first class versus a number of classes to break the pattern of a killing period, or exonerate the person, as the jury would say. This is more in alignment of what Mishima characterizes the human behavior of female aggression around the time of menstruation. Now, these brains that are at work here are usually lively in an area where the amygdala has something to do with aggression, and this also has something to do with fear as well. And you could take a number of classes that teach you brain tumors have uncontrollably violent episodes where they're successfully used in the court of law, but this is also against what the San Francisco history buffs would say around 30 years ago. Dan White, a disappointed office seeker, assassinated the mayor of San Francisco along with Harvey Milk. And then this part was remarkably successful in their defense. So Mishima brings all this into consideration when it comes to delegating the responsibilities between 2 different urinals and 4 different cupcakes of a banana flan split. This is what Richard wants to say, and this is what caused him to do so. This, of course, has been an official Richard review here on richardreviews.com/GriffinChestnut. Today's book Richard reviewed for us is The Temple of the Golden Pavilion by Mishima Yukio. This is an official Richard review here on YouTube, and Richard will be back to review more the first of every course. Thank you.